Japan, a country who bases so much of its values on traditions. But where did these traditions come from? The 1500s were a time of chaos for Japan. Broken and in a state of almost constant warfare, the many daimyos, leaders of small warlike kingdoms that ruled the land who sought to best one another in the struggle over some of history's biggest motivators, power and land. It was not until Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who, through numerous years of war, conquered many of the daimyos and finally brought unity to the once fragmented nation. During his rule, he not only strengthened the role of the samurai and the daimyo's class, but also, after introducing the new technology of muskets to his people, tried to conquer China and Korea during his first and second campaigns in an attempt to expand Japan's influence over Asia. As old age slowly befell Hideyoshi, just before his death, he passed the power and control of the now unified Japan to Tokugawa Ieyasu, a man who would change the way Japan would operate for the next 500 years. Growing up, Tokugawa Ieyasu had a very troublesome childhood. The split of his family into two sides, the Imagawa clan and the Oda clan, was the cause of much tension for years to follow. Son of the Imagawa daimyo, his father was murdered by one of his own servants who was bribed by the Oda clan. Soon after, he was captured and became a hostage to the rival family. As time passed, Hideyoshi took control of the Oda clan, and over the years, Tokugawa Ieyasu became one of his best men, and he was soon promoted. After Hideyoshi had passed away, giving his power and control of the newly unified Japan to Ieyasu. Ieyasu was promoted in establishing the last and the most powerful shogunate that Japan has ever seen. As a shogun, Ieyasu emphasized the rule of the elites and enforced a social hierarchy. In one way in which he maintained this was by the Bakuhan Taisu, the Japanese feudal lord system, a political system that limited the power of local daimyo and secured the rule of the central government. Though emperors were still a prominent aspect of society in Japan, they were mostly seen as public figures than as an elite class which held power, for it was the shogun who possessed all of the control. It was the shogun himself who was in charge of military power, taxation, and trade. Most importantly, rice, which was a staple of the Japanese. The Seclusion Law of 1653, which was passed soon after the monopolization of Japanese trade, allowed trade only with China, Korea, and the Netherlands. Overall, the Tokugawa shogunate era was a time period that closed Japan off to the outside world. Its strict regulations of trade and its strict social hierarchy caused dissatisfaction with much of the lower classes and ultimately began to lead to the shogunate's decline. On the eve of 1853, the fisherman, Daisuke Nagishi, recalled the scene that he saw laid out before him that shocked him as well as the rest of the nation.
私は
I could have never imagined a more monstrous black ship than that of the one before me. It is nothing like any Japanese ship that I've ever seen or heard before. It seems to be made out of the blackest wood I've ever seen, and it seemed to smoke dark smoke from the back of it. Spotting his opportunity in a wicked and vulnerable nation, American Matthew Calverth Perry, along with his fleet of ships, arrived in Japan and forced Japan to end the 220 years policy of isolation and open Japanese ports with the signing of the Kanagawa Treaty. This event signaled the end of the shogunate in 1867, as well as the start of Japan's rise and age of modernization.